Can you see this?
I can see it. I can't hear it, but
oh no, I'm not playing anything at this point. Yeah, worship artist, singer, songwriter, topping gospel charts is actually a Muslim. So this is her. I guess her TikTok or whatever is.
Or TikTok. Okay.
Yeah, I'm with my people. I'm a Muslim that loves worship songs.
This is the TikTokification of worship music.
No, I think it's the other way around. I think worship music created the TikTokification of everything.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Well, okay, so this is interesting though. I'm intrigued. So the part of what's here is she's like, I'm with my people. I'm a Muslim that loves worship songs. And then she posts this and says, I guess I'm not the only Muslim that loves to sing worship songs.
Like she's covering Christian worship songs.
Could you be yes.
Yeah.
But could you be a good Muslim and sing? So there's one that's
I mean, you've got communists playing Bach in China because it's great music. So there's the artistic aspect of it.
Well, it's like that's different though. It's like I can see being a Muslim and want to sing hip hop.
Right. No,
Bach it's worship music, is it?
We live in a world where it's so disjointed that we actually don't see things connected anymore. I like the way worship songs make me feel.
Right.
Is the how we judge, because of everything is deintegrated or disintegrated, and so you have like, well, these make me feel good, and that's how we judge artistic anything.
I'm trying to do this. It's just I want to go to her song again because it is so. What were we gonna say?
Well, I mean, just the poetic blandness of it, I think, is really telling.
Poetic blandness. Okay.
Yeah. So you've got metaphors that they have almost a mirror at, it's the same way if your wife says, "Oh, why do you love me?" and you just start talking about your own feelings, you're very young in love. I mean, you're very immature in love, right?
Right. If you say, well, why? Yeah, go. That's good.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I love the way you make me feel. Right. I love where really it's all about you, and as you grow and mature in love, you start to realize, oh, that, you actually loving the other person as the other person and not as for yourself is maturity in love. And we have very immature worship in that we go, in the American church, we go to worship because of what we get out of it, and not because of the worthiness of God to receive worship, because we don't ask ourselves, what does God want us to bring? Right. It's like getting your wife power tools for her birthday because you need them.
Well, or she likes to steal my power tools, and so I don't know why you brought that
but that's
up.
If you know your wife and you know that she loves power tools, that's one thing.
She does, Jason. She does. You don't have to.
Sorry, getting your wife a box of cigars for your humidor.
She likes the smell of them. She likes the smell of them, Jason.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, part of what I was thinking of was like, you can't do this. Like, if you were you always tell your kids, if you did what I told you to do, you wouldn't be running into these problems. Like, it's kind of always like if you just listen to what I told you to do, you probably don't want a whole bunch of, you won't find Muslims running around here singing psalms like that, right? It's not like they're
yeah.
Yeah. You're not
but I guess though, think about, um, you know, the sing us when
I mean, you probably could. I mean, I've go ahead.
well, I was gonna say, what's the psalm where it says, "They say to us, sing us some of the songs of Zion,"
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
uh, and and the you've got the the world wanting the church's music. I think is built into the system.
Well, no, you said that. As soon as I said that, I was thinking about the fact that they love to come to your gates and hear your singing, right?
Yeah,
Like that.
right.
And so there is a part of where the world does enjoy the beauty of our songs, so that is true.
So
So I get
when
that.
when we go to the world and say we're going to imitate you, it's like a dog chasing its own tail. Um,
But
we're running in circles, trying to say if we put good music together, they'll want us, and so we should imitate their music, and then they'll come in. But the system doesn't work that direction.
yeah, anyway, I don't know why that one
It's
caught me off guard. It's just like, whoa, hey, that's not supposed to be going that direction.
Yeah,
And it
yeah,
is.
because as fun as Sister Act is, it's not good ecclesiology.
No, which it's a whole. Anyway, man, it's been so long since I talked to you. What have you been up to?
Man, just rolling, doing all sorts of stuff.
You're back in the education world. Anything new there? Are we as stupid as you as you think, or are we better off than what you think right now? What?
I'll tell you what is going on in the education world is there is not you can't start classical Christian schools fast enough right now. It is, and this is something you're not going to see on the news, but there are classical Christian schools starting everywhere. It doubled in the last 2 years. It's going to double again, probably in the next 2 years, and I bet then it doubles a third time in the following year.
Do you?
It's ramping. It is ramping.
Do they know why?
Uh, a big part of it was COVID, when
That started
all of a
it.
sudden parents saw what was going on in the classrooms, and then X has had a huge effect because video of what's going on in classrooms was being suppressed, and so people are just coming to the insane realization that that the school system is broken, and when they say, well, what should we do, and start looking a little bit, they find out that that classical education has been hidden from them, and so there's a lot of people that are getting really excited about discovering that there actually is in the history of the world, people weren't as dumb as we are.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're seeing a way out of the dumbing down of everything. So a lot of parents are excited. Churches are starting to say, we've got to disciple. It's our responsibility to disciple these kids. And so you got a lot of church schools starting using classical education. So yeah, so there's a lot of exciting stuff going on that direction. And then, Pete Hegseth's book, it suddenly jumped to number one when, as soon as Trump said, here's the guy I'm going to put forward, everybody said, who is this guy? And they saw that he wrote a book on classical education. So that's had a huge...
Was that Battle for the American Mind?
Battle for the American Mind. Yeah, it's a great book. Nobody saw that coming. And, when writing it, it wasn't even on the radar that he would be anything other than, he's been trying to, kind of fight for an Americanism, but classical education blew his worldview up, and he realized that fighting for Americanism isn't enough. We actually need a return to civilization. You've got this kind of you can't fight back anti-civilization without civilization. with your own anti-civilization. So
there's not enough executive orders to make that work.
right, yeah. So so that's had a huge effect, and then word gets out. You start seeing the first generation of classical school graduates gets out into the world, and everybody goes, man, what happened there? What's going on over there? And then they turn around and put their kids in, and you had 3 graduates becomes 12 new students, and so you've got the growth there as well.
Do you think that, I'm looking at I always look at the age of things. So you look at classical education in America, was probably dormant for 120 years, something like that. And it comes back, and it's really only 2 generations old. It's going through its 3rd generation now, would you say?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of, I think generations are a little bit shorter than they used to be right now. So it's probably, it's probably in its 3rd generation. I mean, it'd be
yeah. It's going through its 3rd generation.
Between second and third, you've got some 2nd generation, some 3rd generation.
Well, I'm trying to market at, I'm thinking of Becca Merkel. She's got grandbabies now, so her kids have just finished 3rd generation.
Third generation of students, 2nd generation of teachers is how I would put it.
Oh, why 2nd generation of teachers?
Because all of the folks that started the first round of classical Christian schools are now in, they're leading schools and retiring. They're kind of in that space. So the 3rd generation of students is coming in, but the 2nd generation
of teachers
of teachers is coming in.
So the 1st generation of teachers are becoming the 2nd generation. 1st generation of students are coming the 2nd generation of teachers.
Yes, exactly.
That's what's happening.
Yes, yep, exactly.
So you're starting to get this 3rd generation that's starting to come through, and this is what I wanted to see. I was saying this like 10 years ago, and I think you were just finishing up with the 1st generation's kids in homeschooling and in classical schools graduating, and now we're seeing them involved and engage in politics, right? and in just life and business, and they've been a small bunch but rowdy, right?
Yeah.
Like it's had a massive impact on American society that I don't think we've counted on that actually having an effect, right?
I don't think we expected that at all, but that's the thing about a liberal arts education, where you're free from the manipulative forces of lies, because you learn the skill of being able to analyze, and you suddenly become difficult to manipulate, and and the whole system is built on manipulative, coercive force, and it only takes a couple of people that say, I don't believe you.
Well, this is what I was gonna. I mean, there's a couple things I was gonna talk to you about, but I've been seeing a lot of have you seen some, like, I think the DNC right now is trying to find their next chair. Have you seen some of that stuff?
It is so strange to watch.
It is. I should find some, because it's worth seeing.
If that doesn't scream judicial blindness, I don't know what does. Like, how can you actually not see that thoroughly?
What do you mean by that?
I mean, they are doubling down, sometimes tripling down on the things that the country is moving against right now. So,
oh yeah, here it goes. Here it goes. This is gonna be so good. I'm gonna try and put it on the screen that we're sharing right now. Let me see.
Is this the debate before the vote?
Oh no, we'll get there. We'll get there. See if I can add this properly. There we go. You don't know which one this one is yet, do you? All right, let me take it back.
rules specify that when we have a gender non-binary candidate or officer, the non-binary individual is counted as neither male nor female, and the remaining 6 offices must be gender balanced. With the results of the previous 4 elections, our elected officers are currently 2 male and 2 female. In order to be gender balanced, we must elect 1 male, 1 female, and 1 person of any gender. So again, this is what we have to do for this vice chair race. We have to elect 1 male, 1 female, and 1 person of any gender. To ensure our process accounts for male, female, and non-binary candidates, we conferred with our RBC co-chair, our LGBT caucus co-chair, and others to ensure that the process is inclusive and meets the gender balance requirements in our rules. To do this, our process will be slightly different than the one outlined to you earlier this week, but I hope you will see that in practice it is simple and transparent. The order of balloting is designed to ensure equal access to the ballot, regardless of gender identity. As we must elect a candidate of any gender as well as 1 male and 1 female vice chair, we will first ask members to elect a candidate of any gender on the first ballot. Any candidate, male, female, and non-binary, can be elected on that ballot. After a candidate is elected on the first ballot, we'll have 1 officer of the 3, so then we will know which position is filled of the 1 male, 1 female, and 1 vice chair of any gender. Our second ballot would also be for a candidate of any gender. Then our third ballot will be the third position that is remaining based on the 2 results. Either a male candidate if a candidate that is not male has not been elected, or a female candidate if a female has not been elected.
So they're eating themselves. I mean, their commitment to the rivalry between men and women there is destroying them. They have fully committed that men and women are rivals, and that they are not. You cannot be for one another. I mean, that's what you see happening there. Is we've got to balance out all the rivalries. So this is not just identity politics. This is identity cosmology.
They're done.
Yeah, I know.
They are absolutely done. Like, if we don't eradicate the Democratic Party out of every place in America over the next 10 years, then it says a lot more about us than it does them.
Yeah. I mean, if they continue on like this,
they're going to.
They're eradicating themselves. They're basically saying we have, so this is where I think this is what a lot of people didn't see about critical theory early on, as they didn't understand that it was a worldview that came in and said, okay, so first off, we assume that rivalry is the fundamental relationship.
Right.
That's the beginning. Well, that's a cosmology that the Bible doesn't it doesn't traffic with,
Right.
Right. So, but if the best we've got is Muslims writing our worship songs, we might be in trouble.
Okay. Before we go there, but first, there's a couple things that came to my mind. I was like, who would then send their kids to schools where these people are teaching them? Because that's the only big problem that we have, is that the way we continue to let these people exist, and with this worldview, the way this cosmology continues to exist, is that we feed them our kids, and they are the ones that get to educate them and shape their cosmology, right? If we're doing that, then we're going to have to deal with them, for the next 150 years or more. But this stuff should die. But it's going to depend on how much we believe our kids are part of the covenant or not, right? Like,
well, the guy that they just ended up electing vice chair.
Are we sure it was a guy, or did he just identify as one?
Yeah, who knows anymore? But I, I feel bad for women that have like a little bit more square of a jaw than other women, because I feel bad that there's no that they have to put up with people doing woman face and then people wondering.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's totally aside. Yeah. No, but he said pets are the new children, plants are the new pets.
No.
Yeah.
Wait, what? What's his name?
Um
I don't believe that. I just want you to be wrong.
he was the kid that that he was like the voice of gun control after there was a shooting, and he went on CNN a bunch of times.
Oh yeah.
So now he got his taste of money in exchange for being a mouthpiece, and now he's vice chair.
David Hogg,
yeah,
that's him. Kids are the new boats. Pets are the new kids.
Oh,
plants are the new pets. Let me explain. I'd rather not.
So he says boats are nice, but you don't want to own one. So it's nice to have friends that have kids, so you can spend some time with kids.
You got to see this. Like, yes, kids are nice, but most people can't afford them. So it's nice to have friends with one, but not have one yourself. Pets are the affordable version of kids today for millennials and Gen Z, and plants are now the more affordable plants. Plants are now the more affordable pets.
Yeah, that's wild. So they picked somebody who said, we don't have a future unless we get your kids. Right. And I think that's what.
Wait, did he just? Okay. I'm just looking at this. This is messed up. But he's kind of put in a very degrading way. First of all. So let me just get all that stuff, all the caveats. But he put the value of children at the most elite status of wealth.
Right. Kids. Well, but this is a communism, right? That people are that value is a monetary, is judged monetarily. So human value is judged monetarily. So if you can afford to have kids, then you can have kids because the cost that kids have. Because he goes on to say, I would rather never have kids and end up with a Porsche than have kids and be poor. Right.
Oh, so you're so right. Hold on, I'll bring it up on screen. I got it right here. This is insane. Can you see that?
I can see it.
Yeah. So like the number of people I know who literally throw big actual birthday parties for their dogs, that they have friends invited and everything is awesome. But also very telling of our changing view of having children in our economic condition. It goes on to say, like me, I never plan on having kids. I would much rather own a Porsche and have a Portuguese water dog and golden doodle. Long term is cheaper, better for the environment, and will never tell you that it hates you or ask you to pay for college. Oh,
right. So they're judging everything, judging the value of people in terms of money. Like this is the people. These are the people that they're putting in charge of the Democratic Party.
That's the guy.
People that, yeah, he just got elected. So they literally are saying rich people are more valuable. I mean, I'd right. So and that people are a threat to the system because the environment, whatever that means, is now the system, and people are a threat to it. So fewer people's better, right? Those sorts of things. If you had
So
people saying that silently because they knew they should be ashamed of it, saying it in
right.
their heads maybe. But now the Democratic Party's electing those folks. So what does that, I mean, it should be easy to beat them because you just wait it out, but you've got to keep your kids.
Well, this is Deuteronomy 28 too, right? Like all the people who were the enemy of God could easily be beat through people who stayed faithful.
Right.
And the way that they knew that we didn't have the Lord on our side anymore is when they were starting to beat us, because they were like, we know shouldn't be possible. So
Right.
they must have left God. Time to get them, right? And so, but so you look at that trajectory. What were we going to say? I didn't want to interrupt you.
Oh, I was just going to say we do need, we should be able to dig in and describe the Imago Dei in such a way that shows that what they're describing is ridiculous. But we can't, right? We don't, most, most Christians still know kids in theory are a blessing, but they don't know what it looks like to live as if the children are an inheritance. Because he's saying, I would rather have a lot of money and nobody to pass it to than have an inheritance.
You saying that's what he's saying?
That's what he's saying, right? But we have to figure out how to not live that way, right? How to live in such a way that we, so here's a good example. I was talking, my daughter was talking to some friends, and all these young guys were saying, well, I haven't pursued a girl yet because I don't have enough money yet. And my daughter said, well, it's actually good for a marriage to start off poor as church mice. So why would it be worse to be poor by yourself than poor in it with someone? Right.
And that's the girl that you go and put a ring on her finger, young man. Do you understand right now? Go put a ring on her finger.
Yeah. But and they were like, I guess I'd never thought of that, and she said, yeah, the devil, if the devil wants you to not get married, you need to get married even harder.
Right.
So, and there are times later in life where God will put you through poverty to transform you into who he wants you to be. And those things are, money isn't our safety. But I think a lot of Christians have bought into that idea. It's that money is, if I have enough money, then we'll be safe. But life is hard. It's better with somebody.
Well, I think one of the things that wealth has done too, you go back and you look at back in the day, part of the reason you had kids was because you needed them to help you go fight in the gate. You need to help them go build, your houses. Kids weren't an
accessory.
They were an investment, right? That paid dividends generationally, and people knew that. And because we have had a good source of children that have been raised properly over the generations and taught to do things right, we've had lots and lots and lots of blessing because somebody married someone else, had 12 kids, and kept them in a 2-bedroom apartment, raised them, educated them, and then those kids went out and had families and had 3 or 4 kids and had a house that was 13,000 square feet, right? And then blessing grew over generations of faithfulness. And because of all that blessing, now we have the luxury of not having kids because we have technology because of all this blessing. We have other people who've had kids and they keep blessing. And we've just had so much abundance of blessing that we don't understand the investment that somebody else gave. And I've been thinking about this a lot, especially as it relates to the economy. As I have kids, my oldest is 17 now. My youngest is 4. And I'm realizing that all the things that I taught them are coming to play in such a way that they are already paying dividends back to me. And they're not even working full-time jobs or doing anything yet, right? The value that they bring to me is exponential. The relational value, just the love that
Yeah.
when you come to your home and your kids are waiting there for. I was coming out from the bathroom from washing my hands from dealing with the dogs, and in one room I'm hearing my kids talking to each other and laughing, and then downstairs I hear them debating, and in the other side of the house I hear one playing the piano, and the other side I hear the other playing the guitar, and then the one I hear singing and drawing and coloring in their room. And I'm like, I couldn't pay for this much
Right.
abundance. I mean, who do you pay to come? Hey, I'm going to pay you to come and bring joy in my house for the next 12 hours of my day. And I need you to go color downstairs like a 4-year-old at the dining room table singing this. I can't pay for that. Right. And so then it's such a fuel to me to have these other human beings bringing value to me that I can't pay for.
Right.
And seeing these souls mature, and all those things though become assets and value to the rest of the world in some other way, right? Their talents, and so like we've gotten so comfortable that your dog is good, they're helpful, animals, that's great, but they're nothing in the same way a human being is,
Right.
in any because dogs didn't give us technology. Right. Somebody made in the image of God, taught how to reason, gave us tech that helps us serve each other better and creates an economy for us to be able to live better and easier and gives us medicine. Oh my goodness. So, as I was listening to him talk, and I've been watching this DNC thing go on. Oh, there's more. Did we even get to, I don't even know if I want to play anymore. It'll drive me nuts. Since I've been driven nuts, I feel like driving everybody else nuts too.
But I think the root of both of these, both a Muslim being able to write a top 10 gospel song, and people don't notice, and this understanding of what do I get? What do I get from a kid? Right? I can get the same things I can get from a kid, I can get from a dog, and they don't cost as much. They both are there's a poetic bankruptcy in the imagination of Americans. So this is I'm going to read a poem. This is Gerard Manley Hopkins.
That I won't play no more foolishness. I'll stop that mess.
And it's as kingfishers catch fire, and the relevant lines are the last three. As kingfishers catch fire, dragonflies draw flame, as tumbled over rim and roundy wells stones ring. Like each tucked string tells, each hung bell's bow swung finds tongue to fling out broad its name. Each mortal thing does one thing and the same, deals out that being indoors each one dwells. Selves, goes itself, myself it speaks and spells, crying, what I do is me, for that I came. I say more, the just man, justices, keeps grace, that keeps all his goings graces, acts in God's eye what in God's eye he is, Christ. For Christ plays in 10,000 places, lovely in limbs and lovely in eyes not his, to the Father through the features of men's faces. First off, Kendrick Lamar ain't got nothing on Gerard Manley Hopkins.
And
in spite of his Grammy win.
I was gonna say,
and
before Grammys.
In spite of the irony of all of those people shouting A minor, they're trying to claim that they've been opposed to that all time. Anyway, but
that's a whole nother conversation.
That's a whole other conversation, right? But Hopkins' point is that every person you meet as the Imago Dei is a reflection of Jesus. Christ plays in 10,000 places. So more people means more Imago Dei running around, right? That there isn't a comparison between a dog and a person. They're
That's
not the
right.
same kind of thing. So if you're getting the same thing from a dog that you're getting from a person, you're broken, right? You're the problem, right? And that's because God has created this allegory of himself, and in order to put on display his infinity, he created lots and lots and lots of people that each are tiny reflections of him, right? So and Jesus is the Imago Dei from all eternity, right? So we're the kind of creature that the Imago Dei from all eternity could become incarnate in, as incarnate as a. So it's a, but that poetic sensibility, that understanding of the deep reality, the deep covenant, is so gone in the church that we don't know, we don't even know how to fight back against it. So one of the things that he says in here, he uses the word selves. He says, as tumbled over rim in roundy wells, stones ring. Like each tucked string tells, each hung bell's bow swung finds tongue to fling out broad its name. Each mortal thing does one thing in the same. He calls that selving, being what God made you to be, right? And the Imago Dei, what were we made to be? Well, we were made to be Christ playing in 10,000 places. Our face is the kind of thing that can shine Christ to other people. That's the kind of being we are. So when we cry out, this is me, as he says, this is what I am, what we should be saying is, I am made to be Christ to my neighbor, to be Christ to my family, to be Christ to my children. I'm made to reflect the eternal Imago Dei, in the way that I am, and every other person made in the image of God. When we look at them, they're a small reflection. They're a little icon of Christ to us, right? So when we serve our neighbor, we are serving Christ by means of his image. So that whole understanding of the world has been gutted and replaced with a communistic rivalry centered or rivalry centric understanding of other people as economic units, and that their value is measured by their bank account or what they cost. And it's just, it is a fully different world that obviously has created hellholes all throughout the world, all throughout history. So, as Christians, we need to be raising our kids up into an understanding that whoever God puts in front of them is somebody that is valuable and worth loving, and worth defending, and all of that.
What is the center of our cosmology? Would you say the Lord's Supper, the table?
Well, I think first it's the triune God, right? He's the center, right? And then in the created order, the center is the Word of God and the sacraments, in terms of what is the center of the gravitational center of reality.
So, so work that out. Work from there. So lay out for me from that, because I think it's easy for us to see the other side and say, okay, yeah, I reject that. Oh, but there is still a part of in our conservative Christian side that has still a broken cosmological structure. Yeah. It's just not tethered. It's not directly tethered the same way theirs is to communism, but we have some of that still in the way that we think in our side.
Yeah, because the temptation is more towards a laissez-faire capitalism that assumes the same cosmology, but but says that the individual is the primary unit versus the collective as the primary unit, but they have the same cosmology. So a laissez-faire capitalism, and which is not the same thing as, the capitalism that is law limited capitalism and love limited capitalism, right, is different. Laissez-faire capitalism assumes the same definition of mankind, that we are economic units, and then instead of saying it's a collective economic unit that is the primary and the individual is a piece of it, they say the individual is the primary unit and the collective is a result of the individuals fighting against one another or something like that, right? So but those two views, the conservative is going to be more tempted towards the laissez-faire capitalism than communism directly. But Christianity, it centers the created order in the Word of God, which created everything in the beginning through a 6-stanza poem. That's the kind of place we live in, is this place made of the Word of God. And then God promises to there's a creator creature divide, right? The creator is a different sort of being than every created thing. God, the Father, Son, and Spirit are that's an independent creation, independent creator, an independent being. He's not a creation. He is not a thing that exists, right? He created things, but he himself is independent fully in his being, right? So, and then he created things that are all dependent beings. So our existence is fully dependent. We don't exist on our own. We're created by the Word of God. But that creator-creature divide, God has promised to meet with and have fellowship with his creation at certain covenant points, right? The sacraments. So in the Old Testament, he set up an entire sacramental system in the tabernacle that was a place where he could meet with his people, and they're still met with his people with barriers in the way between the inner life of God and his people, but he still set up this sacramental system to draw as near to us as we could draw with while still being in our sin. But in the death and resurrection of Jesus, the sacramental system went into the grave and came out resurrected, and that whole distance between us and God was swallowed by Christ, taken into the grave and killed, and it came out with no distance between us and the Father, Son, and the Spirit. So we could actually enter into full fellowship now with the Father, the Son, and the Spirit, be adopted into his family, become a participant in the inner life of God. And he still established sacraments as the promised places where that would be established and renewed established in baptism and renewed on a regular basis in the Lord's Supper. So the Word that created the world, he then inscripturated as well, and so that the Word that in the Bible has the same recreative power that created the world in the first place, and then that creator-creature distance, that divide, God has overcome, so that the only place where the divine nature, the uncreated nature, and the created nature come together is in Jesus, who is fully God and fully man, who has two natures. And so that, and then he promises to, by the power of the Spirit in a mystery, meet with us and restore and build and rebuild that fellowship in the sacraments. So he binds us to himself. He binds us into the inner life of the triune God in baptism. He renews and forgives and restores and continually reveals himself to us by means of using bread and wine to bring us into the inner life of God and live that new resurrection life that the Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead gives in the Word and in the sacraments, right? And this is all, it's all by faith, right? Because it's the promises of God that do this. It's not we can't do this ourselves. We have to trust that God is the one who does the working, because we can't cross the creator creature divide, but God has promised to do it. So it's a fully, and then what happens is that that there is no rivalry in the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. It's a fully rivalry free, eternal love based relationship of self-giving, eternal love that then flows out to the world and transforms the world and undoes the rivalries throughout the world, such that the world is being transformed and pulled or disentangled from its rivalries and restored to the fellowship of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit as it's reflected between the people made in the image of God. So it's that's like a really philosophical version of the gospel.
No, that's really good.
Description of the gospel.
No, that's really helpful. No, because I don't think that's part of what is missing, because, and then this is the part that I think needs to be connected. So we don't understand, when we hear the gospel, most of the time what we're thinking about is restoration to God, apart from our sins now, in relationship, but without it bleeding into the rivalries that exist here. So,
Right.
So then, when we are taking communion and when we're hearing the Lord's word preached every Sunday, for that fellowship, we're not seeing how it disentangles everything else inside of this broken world, right? And so, and how it's being restored. And so that's
Right.
where I wanted to connect now. So now, from the table, from the Lord's Supper, from baptism, from the sacraments, how do you engage now with the world that only sees rivalries? Right.
Well, yeah, I mean, it starts by refusing to enter into them. This is why it was so important in the Middle Ages that the church remain a so we look back at especially the early Middle Ages, and we look at vows of poverty, and we kind of scoff. We scoff and say, "Oh, how silly." That they thought they needed to take a vow of poverty to serve the Lord. But they didn't need to take a vow of poverty to serve the Lord. They needed to take a vow of poverty to transform a world of rivalry. A vow of poverty was the early church, or the early medieval church, refusing to enter into the rivalries of the world.
How?
Because the rivalries of the world were all represented in the economic machine of the empire, right? The economic machine of the empire was where it was what they were, it was representative of the rivalrous nature of the way the world worked, right? Well, the world just works this way, and so you've got to be a part of it. And there were plenty of Christians that didn't take a vow of poverty that had enormous transformative effects. When the first official missionaries got to England, they found Christians, because the people that were trading with England from Rome Christians had gone up there while they were trading. People got converted and they left them with a Bible. So you have these Christian churches that were already established by people that had vested economic interest in the the relationship, right? So that isn't a problem in and of itself. It's not as if a vow of poverty is required, but what the vow of poverty did was dislodge the preaching of the gospel from the rivalries, in a really important symbolic way at the time. And it's the same sort of way that um, when you have a pastor preaching on TV and everybody says, look, he's got a private plane and 7 mansions. Everybody goes, oh, he's in it for the money, right? Because that's how people are. We're all in it for the money. And I get that. He has created, he's used the church to make himself a lot of money. That's what everybody does, right? Well, but a guy that has taken a vow of poverty, but preaches the message to his own hurt, right? Everybody says, well, that person has refused to enter the rivalry. So it's the same reason that churches were given tax exempt status. It was so that the church could exist outside the economic system and be a voice from outside the rivalry, right? That's the proper foundation of tax exempt status is, well, tithing is an economic is a signal that the rivalry that comes with money doesn't run my life, doesn't run our society, right? That there's a whole alternative society underneath this society. So the rivalry isn't foundational, right? There's economic rivalry and competition, and that stuff can exist on a non-rivalrous, because it's not rivalry in competition, I guess, is not rivalry. Competition can be good, when people are trying to build the best robot and somebody builds one better and everybody goes, oh man, that one's better. And then forces the other person working on robots to improve, right? There's competition that's good, but if it's sitting on the foundation of rivalry, then it even destroys the advancement of technology, and that sort of thing.
So then now really define rivalry, because I think we saw some of it taking place within the DNC where it's like, we got to have a man, a woman, and then, so there's a rivalry going on there. And then they create this whole nother category.
Yeah. The 7th person has to be some other category,
but it doesn't exist.
So, yeah. So rivalry, the way I'm using it, there's a limited resources, and if I get some of it, you get less of it. Right. So they're rivalry in the sense that we're fighting over limited resources. So here's something wild. I just was reading Julius Caesar over the weekend, and when all of the men that end up murdering Julius Caesar in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, they get together when all of the people of Rome are cheering on Julius Caesar, and one of them says, the people love Caesar so much that there's not enough love left for us. We've got to get rid of him, right? Well, Shakespeare knows that's not how love works, right? When you love one person, it doesn't mean there's less love for another person. That's just not how love works. But the imagined rivalry is over the limited resources of the love of the Roman citizen. And so,
that's really so, because right now you hit that. You said that's not how love works. Having love for one doesn't mean that you have less love for someone else. That's not how it works. And so rivalry creates a limited amount of love.
Right.
That since they're
the illusion or the imagined limitations.
So therefore they can't have space in their hearts to love anything else, because hearts can't be that big, whatever it is. So it's a perspective of the world that takes the resources of good things and limits them to the point that there's only so much.
Right.
And so right now, one of the things that's really blew up over last week was Vice President J.D. Vance. Have you seen this clip?
I haven't seen the clip. I've just seen a whole bunch of people talking about the Order of Morris.
Yeah, so the Order of Loves, and he just goes through and says, and he's talking about it in relation to, illegal immigration and dealing with other nations. And he's like, look, this is a Christian concept that talks about the orders of loves. And first, you know, I don't think he said love God, but, you know, you love your wife and your family, and then you love, and he just goes all the way out, layering the loves and saying, then you love your nation, state, and then your state, and then you can go on to help other people. But you got to get these orders right in order to be able to function well. And a lot of people who are hearing this are really pushing back against it. And it's because of, I think, what you just said here with the rivalries. They think, well, if you have those orders of love, where is the love for the immigrant who wants to leave their nation? You can't have love for them. And so then what they want to do,
because there's not going to be any love left over.
Exactly. Yes.
The idea is if you love your family, then you have to hate everyone else because you're going to be out of love.
Right. And so then what they want to do is, because they have a limited resource of love, they have to steal love then and say, you can't love your family that much because we need love for these people over here. And you're supposed to love your neighbor. It's like, is there a closer neighbor than my wife?
Right.
I don't know of one, you know?
Well, and I mean, that's really what the Good Samaritan is all about, is that these, you know, each of the people that passes by has an excuse on why they don't have to love this person that's right in front of them, because they say, well, if I love them, then there's not going to be any left over, right? But the whole, I mean, the whole idea of love that if you love one person, that there's not going to be any left over for the stranger, it undermines a Trinitarian view of love. We were created out of the overflow of love. That's the true nature of love. We were created.
That's
in
good.
Colossians, it says, because the Father wanted to glorify his Son. So all of this place was for and to Christ. When the Father said, let's create, I want this place to be created. So God the Father, but that doesn't mean that God doesn't love us. It's obvious. It's over and over and over. It explains how much he loves us. It doesn't, but it actually God's love for us multiplies his love for Christ. That's how love works. And so, you know, if somebody were making an argument like, okay, you love your family well, that's great. You love your city well, that's great. You know, your neighborhood, that's great. How can that overflowing love bring in, what does it look like to love immigrants in that situation? I think that's a great conversation to have. Because having lived in California, I can tell you that the state of California does not love its immigrants well, because it doesn't provide for them justice. It doesn't provide for them equal access to the law. It doesn't, it makes sure
illegal immigrants or immigrants.
Both.
I'm going to say citizens too. You just wrap citizens in there.
Right, citizens as well. Yeah, and that's because that's the way it works, right? If you won't provide justice, if you won't provide justice to one, that doesn't stay put. The injustice spreads.
Bro, that's a really good point. California does not care for its citizens well. It cannot, by definition, care for anybody else well.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Like, it's going to screw over everybody else if it can't manage to love to care for its own citizens, natives that are there. Forget about it caring about you if you're a legal immigrant, right? Like,
so. Yeah. So a good example is the way they close off. They literally bring people in. They bring immigrants in and say, here, this is, we're going to bring you in to work. And then they close off the path to citizenship. So then they're stuck. You've got these people that have been brought in, and then they trap them there. So there's, and that's that. And that if you can't fix that sort of thing, that's the difficulty. Is what do you do with illegal immigrants that were trapped there by our government?
How do they trap them?
So they bring them in, they give them, the ability to get a house, they get them into schools. And so with the promise that they're going to be able to move towards citizenship, and then they never open it up. And so their work card expires, but they've given them a long enough time to establish a life for their family here. But then they keep them illegal so that the farmers can take advantage. And it's so you have Christian farmers there that are working really hard to help these folks that are here working legally, and then and given 7 years to work legally, which should be enough time to become citizens. And these farmers are like, I'm trying to help these my employees, I'm trying to love them well, help them become citizens, and then they keep them out, right? And so now what do? You've lived here 7 years with a promise that is unfulfilled. Those sorts of situations, they're awful, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a terrible, terrible thing to do. But it's the state governments, the county, well, not so much the county governments, but city governments, they put people in those situations. So they're being taken advantage of. They're being misused. Promises aren't being fulfilled, so and I don't know how you solve that problem. I do. You open up the path to citizenship and say, you've been working here, you've been paying taxes, this many years. So here we're going to fast track your citizenship. There's all sorts of things you could do. But the California would rather use them as a political pawn. Well, to stay in power.
Also, too, you can control your border. Like that's one.
Yeah, thing. You've got to do that at the same time.
I mean, that's one of the federal government's jobs, is to make sure that we protect what is ours, right, and the boundaries in which we have, and that helps out a whole lot. That hasn't been happening, yeah. So you got to lead in.
Because when you've got an invasion going on,
yeah,
I don't know if you've watched any of the video of the people that they're deporting. It's just, it's an army. They're deporting an army that came in illegally.
People have been saying it for so long. No one has been listening. A few have been listening, but we haven't seen it. And watching them, well, I got to tell you, Trump's administration is doing a fantastic job of communicating what they're doing to the people who voted for them. And I got to say this too, CNN is doing a fantastic job of showing everything Trump is doing so that the people who voted for him can see it. And they think that they're doing one thing. I mean, it's just amazing. So, you have this, there's a win going on right now because a lot of people, Democrat or Republican, there's just some common sense things that, like, anybody who watched the DNC look for their chair has to be like, I don't want to be here no more.
Right.
I just saw a bunch of overweight women just vying for the chair. One girl got up there and it was her turn to speak, and she started singing an old church hymn / slave song. Like, I'm gonna do me. I was like, oh no. I was playing it. And Sharon said, the ancestors did not approve. Stop it. She was right. But you have to, I was thinking to myself as I was watching, I was like, dang, y'all had Tulsi Gabbard. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Tulsi yet. I want to know what all she been washed of. Like, if she was baptized in Republicanism, I want to look at the water.
What was left behind?
I want to know what all came off. Like, I'm the same way with RFK. Like, I don't believe they got clean yet. Right. Nevertheless, that's the price of populism.
That's exactly it. We just watched a populist revolt, and nobody's sure who's going to end up in charge yet, because it's been a week or something like that.
That's scary though.
It is totally.
Because what we
That's why populism makes me so nervous. Is you don't know what comes out the other side ever.
So whatever just happened. So I don't think you can do this without having a complete split in the Republican Party. So everybody's looking at the Democratic Party. They're like, oh, well, they're done. And I think I mean, think about it. Could you imagine if the Democratic Party had enough sense to keep Tulsi Gabbard on their side, somebody who actually is articulate, she can speak. She is a woman. She is a minority. She's BIPOC. Everything that they want in a candidate, she is. Except for trans and all other stuff like that. But most of the stuff that they want in a candidate, like she is. She's like the perfect candidate for the DNC. It's who they would have. They probably lost a bunch of Tulsi Gabbards, to be honest. Could you imagine who we would have who would go up against her? That'd be really, really tough. Because Tulsi probably is really, unfortunately, is really middle America right now. Like when you think about just America down the road, down the straight middle line, common sense person, still appreciates the military, is a woman, she's feminine, she not into the trans thing. You don't hear her pushing the LGBTQ stuff, seems to be somewhat conservative in her values. I don't know if she's even pro-life or not. I haven't figured that one out. I don't know I gotta figure that out. Hey Siri, is Tulsi Gabbard pro-life? She's taking more conservative positions, but after ending her presidential campaign, yeah, it says that on her. Yeah, so Gabbard has since taken more conservative positions on culture war and social justice issues, including abortion, environmentalism, gun control, and transgender rights. So it seems like she might have switched over to pro-life. So so now we have a new type of Republican Party that is not aligned with a pro message yet. They're just aligned in what they want to tear down, right?
They've got an anti-message only still.
Yes, right now, which I might be okay with. But
I mean, it's better at the moment, but it has to settle into a positive statement.
I don't want them to. No. I could be I could be dead wrong about this. I'll let you tear me up in just a second. But hear me out. Let me say it. Let them tear it all down. I don't care what they do in one sense. It's going to be a mess. Like, just let them. There's so much. Watching U.S. aid and what's going on with that whole story. Watching Doge come in and just, like, gut stuff. Watching, what's his name? Rubio go over to Panama and just, like, handle it. Panama president said they're not going to re-sign with China. Watching Canada flip out and act like they're going to be tough. We know Canada. Drake, look, I'm going to say to Canada is Kendrick Lamar beat Drake, okay? Lamar beat Drake. Learn how it's going to go. You not like us, all right?
The Raptors haven't been able to keep anybody.
It's just fix it and do what Trump asks. That's the only options you have, right? Mexico. What did Mexico do?
So
Mexico
here's
for
my
pause.
thoughts.
Did you see that about that?
Yeah.
Like, on the tariffs?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me finish. I'm gonna let you have it. So everything we need to be FBI stuff is at CIA. I mean, we're getting all the information. It's all coming out. He's cleaning house. Let him tear it all down. You just told me that classical Christian schools are double and possibly going to triple over. There is nothing that the Republican Party can build that I want them to build over the next 20 years. I only want them to be the wrecking ball that they are. If we build our educational institutions and raise up people to be filling in these spots, there is a 10th grader right now that we are creating inside of our classical Christian schools that can fill these spots and can be president of the United States real soon. Right. Give us the time, tear it all down, give us the next 20 years to run and be free and create human beings that can create a freer, more virtuous society for us. Let us work on the
Right.
virtue. We got the virtue. We're taking our kids out the government school. Y'all don't worry about being super virtuous. We just need you not to be crazy at this point. Just don't be crazy, right? And I get all my friends be like, but yeah, no, I'm with you. I want it, but that's not how it's going to work. Right? And I don't need, I'm not, my hope is not in them being virtuous. My hope is for them not to make too many mistakes so that we put our hope in Christ that gives us faithful children that allows us to have a faithful and virtuous society. They're not going to build virtue. They're just not going to do it. All right, I'm done. That's my cry. That's my plea.
I think that one of the biggest parts of all of this is we need a reformation in the church, and
absolutely
there might be some evidence that that's happening, but the government can't give itself a positive vision, or else you get trouble, and that's the concern when I look around and I think, man, if the government is in charge of giving itself a positive vision for itself, then that's where populism goes awry, goes really wrong. And you know, I worry about that. I pray about that. I talk with my kids about it, and you know, we need a strong church that refuses to enter into the rivalries of the world and says, here's what it looks like to live virtuously before God, right? To keep covenant with the Lord, right? To imitate, here's what it looks like when we imitate Christ. And so then the government can say, oh, okay, here's what it will look like to imitate the kingship of Jesus. Whereas if the government tries to look to itself, and say, you know, you get all sorts of things going wrong, which is, you know, that you get imperialism of some stripe or another. Because if Jesus isn't emperor, then somebody else is going to try to be. And we don't need more empires. We really don't. And I don't want an American empire, but I do want, you know, I do think when the plane's going down, or, you know, when the cabin pressure drops, you got to put the mask on yourself before you can help anybody around you.
Right.
So, and I think that's where America is the cabin pressure dropped, and you've got hopefully a government that says, okay, let's put the mask on ourselves first. What do you mean we're sending billions of dollars through NGOs to who knows where? Money that's just disappearing. What do you mean we're funding, you know, all sorts of globalist organizations? Like, what's going on here? So, because I you know, I think the cabin pressure has dropped.
Yep.
So it dropped in Europe a while ago, and nobody put the mask on, and now you've got what you've got in Europe, right? You've got a place falling apart. I think in America, we just realized the cabin pressure dropped when COVID came through, and I'm hopeful. I mean, I'm hopeful for the first time in a long time, but I'm hopeful because you've got stuff going down. And I'm nervous about what's going to go up.
So you agree with me?
Yes, I agree with you.
Now, I'm not arguing to disengage.
Right.
I'm not arguing for sure. To disengage at all. I'm just saying that I'm not going to be. This is tough. RFK ain't my guy.
Right.
He's not. I'm going to tell you, Elon Musk ain't my guy. I like him. There's some things I like about Musk. There's some good things there. There's some general equity stuff there that I like, right? Like he gets it. He falls in line with me every now and then. I don't fall in line with him. He falls in line with me every now and then, and I like it. But I know what his intent is. I know where he's trying to go. This transhumanism thing, I ain't for yet, right? Like I don't like that necessarily. Because I don't like the people who's creating their cosmology is not going to be the one that is godly. It's not going to lead down a good path.
Right.
Dot the end. RFK, I don't trust anybody who doesn't get the life issue right. Bottom line.
Yeah, 100%. RFK, I feel like we're watching. We watched the cement go soft suddenly with a guy, and I don't know how the cement is going to re-dry with him. That's been a weird one because all of a sudden, he when everybody turns on him, he goes, well, where am I going to land? And I think he's still there, and that makes me nervous.
I don't
because I don't think you re-land if you don't say, oh dang, killing children is just a fundamental
bad
wrong.
form of healthcare.
Right? Yeah, if you don't get that right, where are you going to land on other stuff?
How are you the health guy?
Yeah.
How are you the health guy? You think it's okay to kill babies? You can't be the health guy and okay to kill babies. No, It doesn't work like that. And so like I feel differently about RFK. When you said the cement got soft, I'm thinking to myself, no, he was just a statue they dethroned. But he's still the statue. He's still what he was. They just took him down. You think so? Yes. You're the one that convinced me of that. You're the one that convinced me of that. You said RFK has not had to change any of his positions to become a part of the group.
Right. I think that's true. But he is what did you watch any of his
trials?
His trial?
I watched some of it. I saw clips. I didn't see the whole thing.
The parts where he just said, somebody would say something and he'd be like, look, I know you took $1.5 million from Pfizer. We've been friends. So when he said that stuff out loud, that made me go, okay, is he changing? That's the first time I've ever thought he's actually like dislodged from this whole thing by the attacks.
Interesting.
So, but like I said, I don't know if that's forced him to change any positions or if he's just like nothing. You can't trust any of those guys. Those were my friends. We had Thanksgiving together, and now they're cheering when they take away the security, even though there's a credible threat of assassination. They were never my friends in the first place. What is this? So but because our belief systems are connected to which group we're in.
Yeah.
This is a part of being human. So he didn't have to change anything to be invited into the group. Does being invited into the group end up changing him? I don't know. I would say I just don't know. I don't have confidence one direction or the other. Just go, dude's hanging out with Tucker Carlson all the time now. What's going to happen?
That might not be a good thing.
I have no idea if it is or not.
We don't know yet. But
that's my whole thing is I look at the populism and say, I don't even want to try and predict where this is going.
I guess my point is like we are at the point where we are at a demolition stage.
Yeah.
And we're not at a finishing framing stage. What we have right now are sledgehammers.
Yep.
And
they're taking and it's going to dried cement. Right. It's taking down walls, but it's at the foundation level in a lot of places.
And we've had 60 years of a lot of this stuff settled in. I mean, what people don't understand is DEI wasn't something that happened in the last 5 years. It's had a 50-year run, and it's settled in quickly in the last 6-7 years. But
I mean, I remember in the 90s people debating this stuff.
Yeah,
well, you know, Thomas Sowell. Thomas Sowell, how long has he been talking about it? Since the 80s?
Bro, since before then. Yeah, I mean, you had social justice stuff was Theodore Roosevelt. They were talking about social justice stuff in his administration. This has been a long time coming, right? Like, this is not a new setup. This has been going on for a long time, and it just settled in. And so we have a lot of tearing down to do, and it's going to be a long time before we have some building. But the building that I see that's coming is going to come from how much of a education, a free man's education, we are giving the next generation. And that's where the Democratic Party is only going to have enough life as the public schools give them. And that's where it's like Christians, Christians right now can topple the insanity of this current demonic cosmology by just training their kids themselves any possible way that they can over the next 10, 12 years. That's easy work. That's easy work.
I mean, easy is an understatement, but
yeah. Look. As it relates to spending,
comparatively speaking, it is.
Well, that's what I mean. I'm not talking about easier than putting on your tennis shoe. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying when we think about what it takes to move the nation, just to get somebody elected, how much money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars does it take to get a governor elected, to get a city council member to win? We're talking about thousands of dollars. It takes less than that for us just to educate our own kids. Far less than that.
I think one of the difficulties is it is harder. It's hard to give something you don't have. And so educating the next generation when you didn't get an education is a task that I think is just harder than people. I think that's probably a bigger obstacle than a lot of things is, man, I want to give my kids this education, but I don't have it.
And that's how they got you. That's how they got you. Mm-hmm. The education that they gave you told you too stupid to learn something new. That's what it is.
It is. We're out of, and we think we do our learning in school, and then we settle in.
But think of what kind of anthropology you have to believe that. Like the anthropology they gave you is anti-Trinitarian. God did not make you like that.
Right. Well, one of my favorite things Jonathan Edwards wrote is, I believe it's in his book, Heaven, A World of Love, but he talks about he looking forward to the libraries and the resurrection. I can't wait to spend time in the libraries that are going to be in the resurrection, because it's an eternity of growth and learning, and maybe we aren't going to learn from books. We'll get to learn directly from other people, and they'll be our libraries.
I just want a plug that just plugs right into my veins. I know Kung Fu. That's all I want. I just want to be able to absorb it like that.
The process of learning, because we serve an infinite God, who at his right hand are pleasures forevermore. That the forevermore is partly what is us growing and learning and maturing forevermore. And so we may as well get started now. That's part of the forevermore.
So with where you're at right now, and with where education is going, and where you've seen, man, were you around early enough to see kind of some of the beginnings of classical education?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty early.
Has it outpaced what you expected it to do in what it does, but also just the effect it's had on American society? Or do you even think it's had an effect on American society?
I think it's just now beginning to have an effect. So I was sitting at a basketball game, JV classical Christian interschool basketball game, listening to a 19-year-old boy, recent graduate, talk with his mom about just about what he's been learning and what he's up to, and hearing him and his mom have an incredibly rational discussion. And a couple different times his mom was like, "Hey, don't forget you're talking to your mom," and he was like, you're right, because he would get arguing and like, "Oh, you don't, that's not how you argue with a mom, right?
Right, right.
We're having a discussion, but you don't argue with a mom that way."
Your
And he kept
boys,
saying,
maybe.
"You're right."
You may.
Yeah, right. You're sorry. And he was talking to, and I was thinking 25 years ago, you didn't have this sort of intergenerational conversation happening, right? And you didn't have, I think you have a generation of kids that are building on their parents' faith in the classical Christian movement. And the homeschool and the Christian education, that is, every generation was starting fresh for 5 generations, maybe, since World War I. Every generation starts fresh and rejects everything that their parents taught them. And one of the biggest things that a liberal arts education says is, you're a part of something older than you and you build on it. And so I think that's where the strength and the power of a liberal arts education is you learn to honor your parents, you learn to honor your forefathers, you learn to come into something that already existed. And I don't know how many generations of churches, of American evangelical churches, were church plants, church splits. The big new thing was a brand new church. And I think we're moving away from that, which makes Reformation actually possible.
No, it's funny you said that. I'm trying to find this. Because you just brought up covenant. Oh, maybe it came over. Okay, accept. Is this it? I'm trying to find this video. Okay, I found it. Now I got to figure out how to take it back.
So, and I think maybe obvious, maybe it's not, but that's not a methodology of education that is doing that. That's faith.
No, that's what I was gonna. Okay, let's see if I can play this. I want you to hear this. This is basically how you got here.
Great-grandparents, 16 great-grandparents, 32 third-great-grandparents, 64 fourth-great-grandparents, 128 fifth-great-grandparents, 256 sixth-great-grandparents, 512 seventh-great-grandparents, 1,024 eighth-great-grandparents, and 2,048 ninth-great-grandparents.
What?
For you to be born today from 12 previous generations, you needed a total of 4,094 ancestors over the last 400 years. Think for a moment. How many struggles, how many battles, how many difficulties, how much sadness, how much happiness, how many love stories, how many expressions of hope for the future did your ancestors have to undergo for you to exist in this world?
Damn. Yeah.
Damn.
And it made me think about all that happened without any of your questions of what you wanted.
Right.
Right? 4,000 or so people before you, in order for you to get here, in 12 generations, was it?
Yep.
All of those decisions made without any of your guidance.
Input.
They didn't need any answers from you about what to do. you weren't even thought of. They made so many decisions that you walked into, that God put you into, without asking you anything. And we have such a strong idea of this individualism without understanding
Yeah.
covenant. You know?
Well, yeah. And I mean, I love living in the city. My wife and we're urbanites to the core. But one of the things that I find overwhelming, sometimes suffocatingly overwhelming, is at night. We live up on a hill, so you can drive down to the city, and at night you can see all of the cars, driving out in front of you. And I always think every one of those is its own story, and there are thousands of ancestors, or there are thousands of children. There's a future in every one of those cars.
Yep, that's
And
right.
I find it suffocating and overwhelming
Yes.
to think about. But I love it. That's one of the things I love about the city is we've got all of these interconnected stories we're in the middle of them, and they're generations long, and generations into the future is all represented in every single one of those cars. When I was stopped over the freeway on the way to school the other day, and you could feel all the cars going underneath, and I was like thousands every time it went past, and it's overwhelming. It's such a beautiful thing. I mean, that's what I love about the city. And I know some people prefer country, and I'm glad there are people that do, but
they better get used to the city. That's where we're going. That's the future.
It is mostly moving that direction. Yeah.
And it's a blessing. I mean,
it is.
I think blessing creates that, right? Like Garden City is where it's going to be at. So we better get used to that. But I'm excited about, what you just said, when you open up this whole conversation is exciting to me, because I don't think anybody could have imagined the kind of wealth that God would have blessed us with in just a couple generations of doing worship right, and raising our kids in the fear and admonition of the Lord, not giving them to the pagans. And in just a generation or two, the kind of wealth we've accumulated, what does it look like to do it again with this generation having greater wealth of knowledge and grandparents that are in it with them, schools being built? What does it look like when our grandkids have our knowledge that's been washed and sanctified through our kids to get out there and fight? It's going to be crazy. It's going to be insane. That's what I'm looking for. And this is why I'm saying I just need the line to hold. I just need the line to hold while we get busy teaching and training our kids, right? Like they're not going to bring the virtue. The virtue is going to come from the families, right? They could possibly sustain the virtue that we currently have by not doing too much crazy and just stopping what we've had. They can sustain that. But if we're going to generate more virtue in a society, it's going to have to come from husbands and wives loving each other, raising their kids, giving them a full education so they know what story they're in. That is so important. Last word to you, man.
And taking them to church.
That's right. That's right. Worship is at the center of this. This is why what you were talking about with the cosmology, biblical cosmology, if you don't get that table right, if you don't get the Lord right, everything else is an outworking of that. You don't get a doctrine of man apart from a doctrine of God. You don't get a doctrine of the world apart from the doctrine of God. You don't get a doctrine of the table apart from the doctrine of God. You don't get an understanding of economics, which we completely forgot about. Apart from understanding how God made man, right, and what He made him for and to do. But anyway, I gotta run.